everybody, and welcome back to Aamsuntitledpodcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Welcome to my Percy Jackson dedicated podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be moving on to a brand new book in the Heroes of Olympus series. We are going to be talking about Mark of Athena, which is arguably probably one of my favourite books in this series. And I think because the story is very concentrated on Annabeth, she is my favourite character, if you guys haven't figured it out yet. And I can't wait to sort of talk you guys through this journey with me. If you don't know how this works, basically, I'll give you a rundown of what goes on in the whole episode, and I sort of point out any like references to previous books, any hints to what's going to happen, any sort of references to the old books as well. And overall, it's just like my running commentary on the entire book. Um, these episodes do tend to get quite long, so I do have to warn you guys that I am a little bit of a waffler, and this episode will obviously be full of spoilers. So if you haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend reading the book first and then coming back to this. But yeah, I'm really excited because next week I believe is San Diego Comic Con, and I'm really hoping for some season 3 content. But we will see. And just follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads. Any sort of season 3 content I give you, like I will share with you guys straight away. But yeah, let's get into it because I feel like it's going to be a long episode. There's lots of notes on this, so let's do it together. Okay, so chapter 1 opens up in Annabeth's point of view. And it opens up with Annabeth pacing on the deck of the Argo, and she's worried about the Romans, thinking that they had come to attack them. And of course, that's not the reason they're there. They're literally there to pick up Percy, if that makes sense. And she's also told Leo to send a scroll with a message to the Romans to say that they're coming in peace and they're coming with this idea of an allegiance and not to cause conflict, which is a very, very important detail, and you will see why. Leo is, of course, controlling the ship, and Piper is charm speaking, and Jason is stood on the crossbow platform. And it's just amazing because she sort of created this team on her own. And it's like a team that she's had to entrust in because obviously Grover and Percy are not around, which is quite interesting. And it's amazing to see like how much she's developed as a character as well, like her ability to just create a new team and lead a new team on a quest, which is quite interesting. And we get to see more of her in a leadership role in Heroes of Olympus, which I really like. And this book is driven by her quest, so it's nice to see her putting all these skills that she's learned from Chiron into practice. And she sort of mentions in the book that every time she looks at Jason, she's reminded of Percy. It's almost like she's really happy to have Jason as part of her team, but it reminds her of what she's lost as well. And I don't imagine that is something that's easy to look on someone every day who reminds you so much of the person that you love, knowing that they're lost and you don't know when you're going to find them, basically. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit when she said that because I was just like, I can't imagine the torture she's been through without her partner by her side, if that makes sense. And she says that she can feel some sort of like presence behind her, but she turns around and there's no one absolutely there. Now that gave me the heebie-jeebies a little bit because I was just like, what is going on? I was like, why is she feeling this ominous presence? Like, it kind of makes my skin crawl when I hear it, if that makes sense, because I feel like such an attachment to Annabeth, and there's such like a specific version of her in my head that it's almost like I can feel what she's feeling, I can see what she's seeing, and I feel this connectedness that I don't feel to any other character. And she mentions that she had this horrible encounter with Athena, and like they basically had this massive fight, and she now knows that her mum's not going to protect her and she can't even pray to her for her safety, which is really sad. And I don't know if the book goes into much about what that fight was over, but it becomes like this really like running theme over the next couple of books that obviously she doesn't feel like she's got her mum on her side, which is really sad. Like she needs like a divine power in her corner, and she doesn't have that at the minute, which is quite worrying, I think. And of course, she hears the horns blowing in the distance, signaling that the Romans had spotted them. She hears an explosion behind her, and it's Terminus. And Jason tells her that, of course, he will handle it because these are his family. The Roman camp is his home, so this is the only way he can sort of bring them in peacefully. Terminus asks Jason why he is helping the enemy, and he tells them that they are literally just here to talk. And also calling people the enemy straight away. Like I was already like I could already feel this going south really, really quick. I just didn't know how fast it was gonna blow up. Annabeth tells everyone to calm down and that Terminus knows that she is the daughter of Minerva, who is the Roman form of Athena. Terminus tells them to leave and that they can't land their ship within the city's limits because, of course, it's basically a battleship. It's basically a weapon. And Annabeth spots Percy and she tells Leo to keep the ship hovering in the sky. And there is a quote, the way Rick describes it, which is Annabeth heart did a gymnastics routine. And he uses this imagery of her heart doing like leaps and things like that. There's a lot of imagery to how Percy makes her feel, like whether she's breathing in deeply, whether she feels the jolts on her skin, the molecules in her body. Like it's very descriptive, and you do feel like she can feel that, which is. It just comes down to Rick's amazing writing and the way he sort of is able to visualize these things. But it was just like my heart was racing because I was like, oh my god, I was like, this is it, it's happening. I was so excited. Like honestly, you can probably tell from my voice how excited I was. And Annabeth suggests them using the ropes to get down. And there's this moment where she's sort of looking around in the crowd, and there's a quote that I've pulled directly from the book, which is, "But Percy was down there. He was so close. She had to reach him." And I was like, yeah, I'm like something. I've literally been waiting for them to be reunited for two whole books. Like I was I was on the edge of my seat when I read this for the first time. And then Terminus eventually gives her permission to go down to see him, and that's where the chapter comes to an end. So chapter two, we're still in Annabeth's point of view, and it opens up with her walking through the forum, and she sees Tyson and Mrs. O'Leary, two familiar faces, but we know that those are people are not who she's looking for. And then she meets Raina, and someone else appears behind Raina, and it's no other than Percy. And oh my god, I was literally nothing could ruin this moment for me. And I'm going to talk you through the exact quote, which is definitely one of my favourite Percy Math moments in the whole Heroes of Olympus. And the quote is the following: Percy smiled at her, the sarcastic troublemaker smile that had annoyed her for years, but eventually had become endearing. His sea green eyes were as gorgeous as she remembered. His dark hair was swept to one side like he'd just come from a walk on the beach. He looked even better than he had 6 months ago. Tanner, taller, leaner, and more muscular. Oh my god, that description. Like Percy in my mind, like book Percy is like just physically so hot in my opinion. And it was just like the way it was described. Like not only was Annabeth checking him out, but it kind of felt like I was checking him out as well. Like I can imagine like after seeing someone after 6 months, like they look so different, but you know that person even though they look so different. And it's just like I can't blame her for having this reaction because I would have had the same reaction. And it was just like it was so nice to just see that. I think it was like a huge relief for her to just know that he was okay. Like she was living with this thought that something terrible had happened to him. And now she's seeing him in person and she knows that he's okay. And that's all she could ever want. And there's this moment where Annabeth's sort of talking in her mind, and she reveals to the audience that she's secretly had a crush on him since they were 12. And last summer, she had fallen for him so hard. And you know what? It's amazing because they both had this like immense connection and this like unbelievable love for each other. Like, I've never seen love like it. Like, I've read so many books over the years, but the connection between Percy and Annabeth is just something that it's just out of this world and it makes me so happy and I feel so attached to them. And of course, Raina welcomes Jason home, but Annabeth and Percy go running towards each other. And the line from the book specifically is Percy threw his arm around her, they kissed, and for a moment nothing else mattered. An asteroid could have hit the planet and wiped all life out. Wouldn't have cared. And you know what? I had a massive heart attack, guys. I was squealing, I was jumping, I had happy tears coming out my eyes. Like it was something I was so anticipating, and I didn't know how it was gonna happen, and I just knew that it would be perfect, and it was, and I couldn't have asked for anything better. So it just made me so happy that they were finally back together. And then eventually Annabeth sort of judo flips him and warns him about leaving her again, and he says that he missed her too. Oh my god, they are so cute. Like I genuinely I can't handle it. Like the cuteness level is just not allowed. Um Jason, of course, introduces Annabeth saying that she doesn't normally judo flip people and that she only does that to her boyfriend. And it was just funny because like I'm imagining like the whole Roman camp stood there and everybody's just watched her like go from 1 minute showing Percy like the most amount of affection to then judo flipping him. I think it's such a funny juxtaposition and it's so her and it's one of the reasons why I love her so much. Um and of course, like Annabeth sees Hazel and Percy's relationship, and she feels like a teeny bit jealous. And I shouldn't laugh, but I did laugh. I'll be honest, because it's just like they have such like a brother and sister bond. But like to Annabeth, it's this idea of like this woman being close to him for 6 months, and she's just like, oh, go away, like step away from my man, sort of thing, which is quite it's quite nice. And what I do love is, of course, like Annabeth does eventually get to know Hazel and they become good friends. But it's just this, obviously, this initial first impression of Hazel that she gets, and she's just like, oh, I don't like you. It's so funny. And then eventually she sees Frank and she realizes that, of course, Frank is Hazel's boyfriend, so she has no interest in Percy. And Octavian, as usual, is being his horrible self about the Greeks. And I was literally just like, can you just shut up? Like, genuinely, this Octavian is one of those characters. I don't think anyone pisses me off as much as he does. Like, particularly in these books, I'm just like, Octavian, please shut up. Like, I finished Blood of Olympus last week, and he's so annoying in that as well. And I was just like, please, go away. You're not needed. And of course, eventually, Raina gets fed up and she sends Octavian to burn an offering for Jason's safe return. Percy slips his hand into Annabeth, and she feels the presence again. Now, this constant repetition of a presence, I knew something was going to happen. I didn't know what was coming, but I kind of got this like, you know, when you're in a room and like you feel like there's something there and you can't describe it. It's like this sensation that you feel, and you know no one's there, but it's just like this eerie thing in the background that you feel like someone's there. It feels the same for Annabeth, and that worried me slightly. And the chapter sort of comes to an end with Raina saying it's time for a proper reunion, which is quite nice. Chapter 3, again, Annabeth's point of view, and it opens up with them all sat round eating. And Percy says that he wants to show her around New Rome, just the two of them. Right, New Rome is a very special place to Percy. Like, he realizes that that's the place he could have a future with Annabeth, where they could get away from the demigod life and just live life as two regular people in a relationship. And Annabeth starts to feel a little bit self conscious because she doesn't understand his attachment to this camp. Home, like to her, she's just like, what is going on? She's feeling jealous, and that's completely understandable. And it's also like, I think it's this little bit of fear in her that's like, oh my god, what if he leaves me to stay here? Which is obviously like one of those irrational thoughts, but at the end of the day, like Rick is trying to present her like any normal human being who is just scared to lose someone. And that's completely normal. And I'm glad he, like, despite the fact that she is probably the most formidable demigod child alive, he still gives her that humanity, which I like. And of course, the Romans and the Greeks, they begin exchanging stories, and they just seem like this very big, happy family. And the worst part is, when I was reading this, a cynical side of me sort of kicked in, where I was like, it just seems too good to be true, if that makes sense. And of course, Annabeth notices that Raina has been looking between Jason and Piper really awkwardly. And I was like, I think Annabeth had clocked on that Raina, of course, had feelings for Jason, and now he's come back with a new girlfriend from a Greek camp. So she's probably like, what the fuck's going on? And it was something that like I felt bad for Raina, like genuinely. Like first she tried to shoot her shot with Percy and it didn't go well. Then Jason went missing and he had his memory wiped. And of course, like unlike Percy, he couldn't remember Raina or the fact that they'd had any feelings or any sort of history together. And he came back with Piper. So I can imagine like the sort of hurt. And what I love about Annabeth is that she's so attentive to the people around her. And like I'm glad that she's noticing other people. And she kind of does feel sorry for Raina. Like, she realizes that Raina didn't, unfortunately, get the happiness that Annabeth was fortunate enough to get. And of course, Jason and Percy are having like this whole like bromance session, and they're like thanking each other for looking after the cabs and things like that. It's just a lovely moment between the two of them. And it's just like, obviously it makes me think like Poseidon and Zeus, they don't really get along. Like, none of the big three brothers get along, but it's nice to see that their children are kind of able to look past that and be friends, if that makes sense. And Raina, of course, tells Octavian to announce the great prophecy, and Annabeth accidentally blurts out the lines of the prophecy. She's already heard this before. And Raina tells her that Percy has spoken so highly of her, and then she finally realizes that Raina had tried to make a move on Percy, but he had, of course, turned her down for Annabeth because he knew that he was still committed to her. And there's this lovely line, the way Rick's like written it, which is that he says something along the lines of, at that moment, Annabeth forgave her ridiculous boyfriend for everything he'd ever done wrong. Like, it is a big deal to turn someone down. And it's like, especially when you turn them down because you love someone, it's such a big thing in her mind. And she realizes that actually this jealousy that she had earlier about him, like worrying about whether he would want to move here or like go off with someone else, was completely irrational. And it's nice to have that moment where she feels that security again. Hazel tells them about, of course, Nico's disappearance, and Percy says that they need to go to the original Rome. Raina tells them that they've been traveling through the Mediterranean is dangerous because it is the birthplace of the gods and the ancestral home of monsters. Sounds absolutely horrible, by the way. It literally, do you know what it made it sound like? It made it sound like a suicide mission, and I was just a bit like, why do they always land themselves in these situations? Like, no other demigods that could like take the hit for a change. And of course, Annabeth decides that everyone is going to come on this quest, but Octavian tries to object. Sorry, who asked you? Like, genuinely, sit down. Like, that's what I was thinking. I was just like, my girl decided something, everybody goes along with what she says. And of course, Tyson and Ella enter the room, and she says that she doesn't want to get back on the ship, which is strange. And Ella looks at Annabeth and calls her bad luck. Oh my god, that was so awkward. Like, honestly, when I was reading that, I was just like, why would Ella say something like that? And of course, Frank tries to stop her, but she continues to recite the lines from the prophecy, which is, the mark of Athena burns through Rome, twins snuff out angel's breath, who holds the keys to an endless death. Giant's bane stands gold and pale, won through the pain of a woven jail. The rhyming, by the way, Rick's rhyming, honestly incredible. And of course, the silver coin that Annabeth received from her mother starts to get warmer in her pocket, and she realizes it's kind of like a cursed gift. And everyone denies to Octavian that this isn't the prophecy, it's just something that Ella read from a book. And thankfully, she plays along because, of course, if Octavian gets the suspicion that this is a real prophecy, he'll think that, of course, Annabeth and Lena have come to wipe out the Romans, which would cause a whole fight. Annabeth, of course, tells Tyson to take Ella on a shadow ride, and Raina agrees. It's sort of like Octavian tells them that their whole camp smells of treachery. Seriously, can somebody get rid of this guy? Like, I don't understand how he's gotten through being this bitter in life. It's just like, please, just leave. Like, genuinely, you don't need to be here. And he was getting on my nerves from the beginning of the book, so I knew I was just going to hate him throughout. Leo offers to give Octavian a tour of the ship, and Raina thinks it's a good idea, but Octavian reluctantly agrees. Thank God Leo was there to save the day. Like, he's so loving. What I like about Leo is he's very good at diffusing like a tense situation, and he knows like how to offer people something that they can't refuse. Annabeth can feel that coldness and that presence again, and she even thinks about like stopping them from going to the ship because she feels like there's something wrong and something's going to be happen, but then she's also like in this conflicted mind state where she doesn't know if she's just being paranoid or not. And I wouldn't know, honestly, in that situation. Like, I get like horrible feelings in my gut when things are gonna go wrong, and like it's always this like mental battle, which is just like, yeah, but maybe like my body's just being silly and it's not actually sensing anything, and maybe I'm just worrying people for nothing, if that makes sense. And I think she's sort of going through that battle as well. Jason says that he wants to show Piper around the Senate before the Senate meeting, and Raina is so jealous. And you know why? Like, one thing I realized was that so many of the guys, particularly in this universe, are so dense. It's just like, can you not see from her face? Can you not tell from her body language that she's jealous? And it's just like, do you know what? I feel worse for Reina because it kind of feels like everybody is rubbing their relationships in her face. And she's such a great character. Like, I'll be honest, I wasn't keen on her initially, especially when I read this book. I was a bit like, oh, not a fan. But as now that I've reread Heroes of Olympus and I've got all the way to the end and I've seen what she's done for both these camps, I'm just like, can't hate her because she is a great person. It's just unfortunately she wasn't lucky in the love angle of things. And then finally, Percy says that he wants to do the same, but Raina opposes straight away, stating that she wants to talk to Annabeth in private. And it was quite obvious that she wasn't asking for permission. Chapter 4, again, still in Annabeth's point of view, and it opens up with Annabeth admiring the architecture of New Rome. And honestly, I would be doing the same. Like, the way it is described, it seems like one of the most beautiful places on earth. And Raina tells her about how Percy was interested in the area where they settle down and raise families. And Annabeth is sort of a little bit confused. She's kind of like, why are you telling me this? And I think that it's kind of circling in, like, I think Raina was indirectly trying to explain to her why Percy is attached to New Rome, but she wasn't getting it, bless her. And of course, Raina tells her that she is the daughter of Bellona, a Roman goddess of war. I've never heard of her until, of course, these books, and I don't know much about Roman mythology. I'm more the Greek side of things. So it was interesting because I kind of feel like I was getting a history lesson as well. And she shows Annabeth her two metal dogs, Aurum and Argentum. And she says that she's gonna walk them. And honestly, I just like when I think of metal dogs, I don't know what comes to my head. I think the thing I'm thinking of, I don't know which Wallace and Gromit it is, but the guy with the metal dog, the one with the metal dog in it, like that's what I imagine Raina's pets to look like. And I know it probably doesn't look anything like that, but that is kind of what I'm picturing. And she sort of asks Annabeth, like, do you know how different, like, Athena's Roman form is to her Greek form? And she tells her that, of course, like, Athena is the goddess of crafts and wisdom and not war, and that she is a maiden goddess here, so there are no children of hers at Camp Jupiter, which is quite interesting to see that she didn't have any Roman demigods. Like, that, I thought that was quite weird, in fairness. I just thought she'd at least have a couple, but obviously not. And then, of course, she asks about the prophecy lines that Ella spoke, and Annabeth tells her they they have met before. Girl, do not pull that thread. I was literally like, please don't bring this up again. I was like, it's not needed. And Raina tells her that she was a handmaiden of Circe. And of course, if you guys don't remember, in the Sea of Monsters, Percy and Annabeth kind of destroyed Circe's resort and spa and island, and yeah, just kind of caused a ruckus there. And now it's sort of come full circle, like years later, where she's meeting her again. Back then, Annabeth was like, what, 13, 12, 13. So, like, it could have honestly also been innocent mistakes, but the fact that Raina and her have met before and they've got like a bit of a beef with each other, even though Annabeth doesn't remember it, it's still a bit like I felt like I was walking on eggshells a bit. I was like, ooh, I don't know where she's going with this. And then she eventually takes Annabeth to her favourite spot, which is the Garden of Bacchus. And she tells her that she wants to hear it from Annabeth's mouth that she isn't making a mistake by trusting them. It was a really, like, brave thing that Raina did by allowing the Greeks to come into the camp. And she just wants to know that she's not making a mistake. And I understand that. Like, it's a big reassurance. Like, she would have to answer to everyone in Camp Jupiter if she let a threat into their walls and she didn't stop to check the facts, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, she is a leader and she knows that she's personally responsible for all these people. And it's just nice that Annabeth is able to be like, yeah, no, like, we're here and we're not here to cause chaos. And of course, like, Annabeth talks a lot in her head about the fact that she feels so bad for Raina because now Piper's taken Jason from her. And she had also taken Percy from her too, and that leaves her completely alone. And I feel terrible because I know that Raina is, of course, a little bit rough around the edges, but she's not bad at all, and she does deserve someone. But yeah, it was just something like it was amazing because the same thoughts that I were having, it was almost like it was written on the page, which was quite nice. And then eventually Annabeth sort of talks a little bit about her own life, and Raina tells her that every time Greeks and Romans have met, they've fought, and she thinks that there might be a flaw in Juno's plan. And of course, Annabeth sort of reassures her that despite her doubts, like they need both teams to come together if they're going to win this war, if that makes sense. And Raina tells her the story about a man who was a son of Athena who washed up on Circe's island, and he claimed to be her following the mark of Athena, but Raina was sort of like suspicious of him. So children of Athena have attempted to follow this path before, and they've ended up in all sorts of places, and they've never managed to complete quest. So she's sort of a bit like suspicious of Annabeth as to why she's following this path, if that makes sense. And they see an explosion in the forum, and Raina thinks that the Greeks have betrayed her trust. And she sees the Argo launch a second volley, and Annabeth says that they didn't have anything to do with this. Raina believes her, but she says that someone will have to pay because to them, some like at the end of the day, what you have to remember is the Greeks and Romans are on two sides of the equation, right? So they're seeing this as treachery. Like they've allowed the Greeks to come into their home, and now they're attacking their home. If that makes sense. And then all of a sudden they see this massive fight break out in the forum, and the Romans are attacking the Argo, and Jason and Piper as well. Like they're down there and they need help. She sees Percy, Hazel, and Frank who are being attacked, and Octavian says it's Leo who started it, and he tells the Romans to kill the invaders. I can tell that, like, my first suspicion for all of this was that Octavian had done something to do this, to try and divide the Greeks and Romans, but obviously we don't know about any of that just yet. We have to sort of follow the plot line through. Percy tells everyone that they have to leave, and Hazel tells them to send an Iris message when they escape, and she gets on Arion. They see Piper and Jason being attacked, and Percy sends Frank to help them. Percy and Annabeth lunge for the ladder, and Percy throws Octavian into the mob. Yeah, you know what? I think that's a pretty bad last move, in fairness. I probably would have done the same thing. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. What was I talking about? Yeah, so Octavian gets thrown into the mob, and I'll be quite honest, I was laughing. I know this was the wrong time to laugh, but I was 100% laughing at what was going on. And Annabeth sees a dragon attacking the Romans, and she realizes that it's Frank. Once they eventually get aboard, they see Leo reloading the weapons. He's in some sort of trance, like he's literally possessed, and Percy manages to knock him out. Frank drops off Jason and Piper, and Percy tells Annabeth to get them out of there. Annabeth presses the up button on the ship, and it flies into the clouds, and that's how this chapter comes to an end. Second to last chapter we're going to be talking about is chapter 5, which is Leo's point of view. And it opens up with Annabeth asking him what happened, and he says he literally doesn't know. She sends Coach to check on the satellites, and he says that he got the exact same cold feeling that Annabeth did, which is really strange. It must mean that there is something on the ship because it's made Leo go absolutely crazy, and it's made Annabeth feel like somebody's watching her constantly. Percy calls Annabeth below the deck, and she leaves Frank to watch over Leo. And of course, Frank asks Leo if his name is Sammy, and Leo is confused as hell. Honestly, I was a bit like, oh my god. I was like, here we go. I was like, not this Sammy thing again. I knew that this was going to cause like a lot of problems, but I didn't realize it was going to cause a problem so early on. And of course, then Leo takes it upon himself to introduce Frank to Festus, his dragon. Frank asks about Hazel, and Leo says that she is following behind. And Leo asks Frank if Hazel is his girlfriend, and he says yes, but in a bit of like an unsure way. And like the one thing that kept going through my head was he's 100% jealous because he thinks that like Leo is Sammy, and like of course he knows that Hazel was in love with Sammy for the longest time, so he thinks that he's gonna get dumped, which obviously is not gonna happen. But it's like this doubt and this worry about losing the person that you love, which is it's quite cute actually when I think about it. But I understand for Frank, it's probably quite a difficult pill to swallow, which is just like you've just made this girl your girlfriend, and now all of a sudden a guy who kind of looks like her ex has turned up. Percy and Annabeth come back, and Leo asks about Jason, and Annabeth says that he's of course resting from all the fighting. Of course, Leo then apologizes to Percy, and no, hold on. Leo tries to apologize, and Percy nearly attacks him, but Annabeth manages to calm him down. And then he tells Frank to tell Hazel to meet them at the Great Salt Lake in Utah, which I had to Google because I didn't know what that was, in fairness, but I managed to Google it and get a bit more of an image as to what we were looking at. He eventually lands the Argo and they meet up with Hazel, and he tells the coach to watch over the ship. Hazel's staring at him, which of course, like, she can't believe, because obviously she thinks he's Sammy. She's gonna look at him in a sort of weird way and like wonder if he's actually her long lost love, which we will see if he is or not. I was about to spoil it and be like, oh yeah, but I'm not gonna say that just yet. And he keeps having this feeling that they've met before, which is a bit like, ooh, what's going on here? How have you met her before? Sort of thing. Hazel tells him she wants to see the ship, so he takes her abroad. And apparently, inside the ship, which is quite a cool thing, and it's probably one of the reasons why Leo is probably one of the coolest characters, is that he's built like cabins for each demigod with a room on the ship. Um, and of course a room for Coach Hedge as well. Not Chiron's wide this decision, making him, the chaperone for these kids, but whatever. And Percy asks that what they should do now, and Leo suggests figuring out this prophecy because of course this is the next challenge that they've got to tackle, so they've got to figure it out at some point. Percy tells Tyson to take Ella back to Camp Half-Blood for her safety, and Annabeth asks Leo what he needs to fix the ship, and he says tar. Annabeth also tells him that she felt the same cold that he did, and Leo suggests that they should all have a buddy system, so nobody gets left alone, which I think is quite a good idea. Like, especially when two of the people are already feeling a little bit on edge, it is nice to have that reassurance. So, like, if anything goes wrong, nobody's alone. If that makes sense. And there's this moment where Percy says to Annabeth, "As long as you're my buddy, I'm good," and I'm like, that's really cute. I was just like, he's just so good. Like, he's just so good at like reassuring her and being like this A-class boyfriend. It's honestly insane. Hazel tells Frank if he can fly Percy and Annabeth down so that they can get the tar, and Hazel tells them that she's going with Leo to get the celestial bronze online. Annabeth asks him how long it's going to take to fix this ship, and he says a couple of hours, and that's where the chapter comes to an end. So the last chapter that we will be talking about in this part of the episode is chapter 6. So we are in Leo's point of view still, and it opens up with him and Hazel riding on Arion. And Percy had already filled him in with Hazel's backstory. And they get off the horse, and Hazel says she will call him when she needs him. And Leo tells her that the whole beach is made of lime, which is quite cool, actually. I think that's such an interesting concept. And he hears Gaia telling him to walk away, and Hazel asks him if he's okay. And he realizes that, like, he thinks he's just being paranoid, and these voices are just in his head. But he plays such an incredible part in this part of the story, and he's such a target for Gaia as well. And there's lots of, particularly, I don't know if it's in this book and the next book, there's a lot of Gaia trying to get in his head, so we will talk more about that when we sort of get there. Hazel tells him that he is so much like Sammy, and Leo knows that because Frank had already told him about it. And he tells her that he needs celestial bronze, and she says there's some about 50 yards. It's quite cool. She's got this really cool ability to know where things are, and I think that's, do you know what? It's a very like underrated ability, and it's like Hazel is an incredible character. She's a very powerful demigod, but there's like little things like this that are pretty cool as well. And they see a woman sitting on a boulder in the middle of a grassy field. First of all, that's the biggest red flag I've ever seen in my life. Why is there just this random woman just there, casually, like not doing anything in the middle of nowhere? And when the woman looks up at Leo, he calls her Aunt Rosa, and she asks Hazel who she thinks she is. And Hazel, of course, looks into her eyes, and she says that she sees Mrs. Lear, a teacher that she hated. And Leo realizes that she is Nemesis, god of revenge. And I was like, oh god. I was like, they're just coming out of nowhere, aren't they? There's literally god after god in this, which is pretty cool. But sometimes I'm just like, they just can't go anywhere without running into a problem or any sort of danger or running into a god. And she's she It's really funny because she's like a nemesis, like she's this supposed to be like this really serious goddess, and she's sat there writing horrible fortunes on fortune cookies to freak people out and encounter her sister. I was like, what? I was like, what does that even mean? Oh, sorry, not encounter, counter. I can't read my own writing. What an idiot. Leo asks her why she's here. I was wondering the same thing. And she tells them that there is a civil war brewing between the Romans and the Greeks. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. We literally just saw it unfold. She says that she is here to offer her help. I doubt that very highly. And when these gods do come to offer their help, it normally comes with a price. And that price always does worry me. Nemesis tells them that they will have to find the bronze with the sweetheart. I feel like I'm being paranoid now. So I feel like I can hear the doors opening and closing when they're not. Silly me. Anyway, let's carry on. She tells them that they have 6 days before Nico dies with the entire city of Rome. Jesus Christ. Hey, 6 days to figure out where he is. He could literally be anywhere. But okay. I panicked when I saw the 6 days, so I was like, really? 6 days to track someone down? That's not looking enough. She tells Leo his hardships are yet to come and that he will come across a problem that he cannot solve. She could help him for a price. Ooh, I don't like this whole like foreshadowing business. Like it does freak me out. I'm just like, really? A problem that he can't solve? That doesn't sound good at all. And the fact that she's saying that hardships are still yet to come, like this journey for him has already been difficult enough as it is, and it feels like it's gonna get a lot harder, so I do feel sorry for him. She gives him a fortune cookie and she tells him to break it if he ever needs an answer. Then finally she tells him to reconsider her offer and mentions a cursed boy before she gets on her motorbike and disappears. I was like, what on earth is going on? Genuinely, what on earth is going on? And the chapter comes to an end with them seeing a crumpled piece of paper that says, "You will see yourself reflected and you will have reason to despair." Ooh, that was really ominous, and I was like, I want to carry on, but I was like, no, this is a good place to stop the episode because it means that we could pick up next episode in something really interesting. So let's kind of wrap this episode up with my final thoughts and feelings. So first of all, a lot going on in the book right from the get go. Like there's constantly stuff going on, and I love that. And of course, Rick teases a new fight between Athena and Annabeth, which I believe, like from the beginning, was most likely over Percy. And like she kind of warned Percy in the Titan's Curse book to stay away from Annabeth. Like she never approved of their relationship. And of course, now they're in a full-fledged relationship. I guarantee she caused some sort of problem. He is right. They're just soulmates, and there's nothing that we can do about it. So no one really cares about her opinion. Percy and Annabeth are, of course, finally reunited, which is obviously my favourite part of this book. And it means that we're going to get some epic Percabeth moments in this book, which will be quite nice. And, it was a really close call at Camp Jupiter. I honestly thought they weren't going to make it out, and somehow they managed to do it. And I did laugh when Octavian got thrown into the mob. I will not forget that, and that's probably one of the funniest things that has happened so far in these books. Poor Leo, he didn't have a clue what he did, and I know he didn't mean to do what he did, but it'll be interesting to see what the cause of that was eventually. And the whole Hazel, Frank, and Leo situation, it's really confusing. And we will definitely come back to that in later episodes when we finally get an answer to their equation. And of course, Nemesis is as horrible as I thought she was going to be. I still hate Hera the most. Like, literally, there is no goddess I hate more than her. But I was just like, at least she kind of gave something to help Leo. So I suppose I'll let her off on this one occasion. And of course, the last thing is poor Nico. We have to find him. Like we've literally got only 6 days to find him. And like something about Nico, like I didn't like him initially, but his character has really, really grown on me. So I'm like, they need to do anything they can to find him. Right. Anyway, that's everything in today's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. All episodes of the podcast are available to stream on Spotify and on my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel whilst you're there and follow me on Spotify to be the first to know when a new episode goes live. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Threads for lots of Percy Jackson content and to know when I put a new episode on. At the minute, it's been every Thursday. I think I've been quite good at it. It's for the last 3-4 weeks. It's been every Thursday, so it seemed me like Thursday's an upload day, but I'm not making that as an official thing. And yeah, San Diego Comic Con next week. So hopefully by this time next week, I'll have some exciting things to share with you guys. So Yeah, let's do it. Thank you guys so much for listening in. I really appreciate it. I'm apologize that this episode is really, really long. I thought I was trying to like speed it up, but it's already like 40 minutes, so I didn't do very well at that, but I will try again next week. Anyway, I will speak to you guys next week. Mwah. Bye.